Welcome back to our Golden 20s. This is episode 10.
Woohoo.
We made
double
it
digit.
to 10.
Yeah.
That's actually crazy now that I'm thinking about it, because that means we've been doing this for 10 weeks, which is nuts, but we are doing it. We're getting stuff done. Speaking of getting stuff done, we're 1 week into the Glow Up Challenge. How are you feeling about it, Sadie?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a little all over the place lately. Just like some days, I feel like this happens to all of us, but you know, having really like good days and then really like bad days. And I feel like the Glow Up Challenge is good in the sense of I'm like I'm putting more effort into every day, hoping to have more good days. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I feel like that's a pro, but those bad days still come around, obviously. Hello, this is COVID. This is the world we live in now. But it's good. It's good to have something to like be consciously working towards, I guess.
Yeah, not just like floating through, because every day is like the same. So having something to spice it up is nice. Yeah.
And I just got a new agenda from Winners. So I kind of have like this really stupid story, and you're probably not going to be able to hear it, like see it very well, like through a podcast, you know, but I'll quickly tell it. So I have used the same agenda from Rifle Paper Co. for years now. And I just get it like, you know, the new one every year. But this year I was like, okay, I probably don't need like the big one that I get every year, because last year I didn't use my agenda all that much once we started working from home and once I stopped having a life to plan, which is depressing, but it's true. So this year I was like, okay, great. I'm just going to get like a mini agenda from Rifle Paper Co. So I ordered it from Anthro and they shipped it like just from the store. They shipped it right to my house. So fun fact, if you're a avid Anthro shopper, you can just call the Canadian store, and if they have it, they'll ship it to your house for free. No like shipping, no duties, whatever. So that was great. And I get it, and it is literally the size of my palm, this planner. Like, it is the tiniest planner ever. And I was like, okay, I wanted it small, but not that small. So I couldn't even like write in it because I write really big. So the planner is super cute, but it was not practical at all. So I just went to Winners / HomeSense a few days ago or last week, and I saw this like planner on sale. So I was like, I'm gonna get this. And now, sorry, I'm going on a huge rant about planners.
No, that's fine.
Everybody's like, how did we even get here? And I have no idea either. But I'm using this new planner I got a few days ago, and I find it's really helping me bring like purpose back into my life. And like you were saying, I don't feel like I'm just floating, because I can sit down like I used to do every single Sunday and write out, you know, on Monday I'm gonna go for a run, on Tuesday I'm gonna, you know, sit down with Teagan and have a FaceTime call, on Wednesday I'm gonna do yoga flow, or you know, like I can plan things out, and it just makes me feel more productive that way. So that's how the Glow Up Challenge is. I'm trying to plan my glow up in my planner.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I feel like 1 weekend, probably not too many glowing results, but you know, hopefully people are feeling a little better. I do feel like with this kind of stuff, the more you do it, it's like the more you want to do it. Like the more you work out, it's like if you go from working out 0 days to working out 1 day, I feel like that's harder than going from like 1 day to 2 days or 2 days to 3 days. Like it's like once you get started and come up with like a habit, then it's like, okay, we are into it. So maybe not like, you know, results yet, but hopefully people are starting to see like habits and are starting to feel a little better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So first segment of today, because we love our segments here at our Golden 20s, is we have another Tuesday tip coming in hot. Technically 2 tips, because there are 2 of us.
Yeah.
So Sadie, what is your Tuesday tip for our listeners?
I feel like I should have just said use an agenda would be my Tuesday tip after I just went on this huge rant, but I have a different tip too. So use agenda. Okay, bonus people, you're getting 3 tips because I'm going to share another one. And I feel like we're going to circle back on the whole agenda thing later in this episode anyway, but spoiler alert. Anyways, my actual Tuesday tip, what I came prepared to actually talk about today is, okay, this isn't maybe a tip, but it's something I've been really enjoying and I want to share with you guys. So for Christmas, I was kind of like struggling with what I wanted to ask for as gifts, and my family still like gives everybody gifts and we enjoy giving gifts. So it's always like, I want to know what everybody else wants, but when I have to come up with things that I want, I always struggle, you know? Like, I rather give gifts, which maybe sounds lame and cliche, but it's true. So anyways, Tag, you inspired me when I went to your house for your wedding last October. I slept over at Teagan's house for like a few nights before the wedding, and you gave me like a bunch of magazines to read, and I was like, you know, just like at night when I was like unwinding, doing my little like me time, I was flipping through these magazines and I was like, man, I miss just like flipping through magazines. Like when I was a kid, I would like save all my babysitting money, and then my mom and I would go to Shoppers and I would buy a whole bunch of like J14 and like Pop 17 magazines, like, you know, all those. But I haven't just like bought magazines in a long time. So I put on my Christmas list to get like magazine subscriptions would be like a really great gift idea. And I didn't end up getting any because I got a lot of other really great things for Christmas. But when January hit, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that for myself because it's really not that expensive. It's like $20 to $30 for the year, depending on what magazine you get. And it's like setting me up for something to look forward to every single month for the rest of this year. And that's been exactly what it is for me so far. Is like, I usually forget about it. I've only received 2 issues now in the mail, but I forgot about it both times. Like I filled out the subscription. Then my March issue, I guess, arrived in February, and then the April issue arrived in March. And both times I was like walking up after a walk and came back and was like, oh, I have mail. And I was like, oh, I have magazines. And it's just so like a nice surprise, even though I did that, like planned that for myself. But then I was thinking, I feel like I'm not a huge reader. I'm trying to get more into reading, but I really value like reading during screen-free time. So I feel like magazines are just like really good, like, you know, light, easy reads when you don't want to open like a novel, but you also want to break from your screens. It's really just like fun, easy read. But the other thing that I'm really loving, so like I said, I've now had my second issue. Like so I took the first one once I finished reading it, and I literally read it from cover to cover. And now that I read it, I'm going to like go back through and then pull pieces from it to cut and put on my vision board. So it's like ticking all the boxes here, guys. It provides a little joy when I get it in the mail, gives me screen-free time break, and then also gives me content for my vision board. So that is my tip. Subscribe to magazines. There's literally a magazine for everything you could think of. If it's like lifestyle, fashion, beauty, cooking, home. I saw there's magazines for pets, and it's like there's a magazine for everything. So yeah.
What magazine are you subscribed to?
So I definitely have a guilty pleasure for Cosmo.
Me too. I have a Cosmo subscription too.
Yeah, I think like because that was a magazine you gave me and I loved it. So I was like,
I love Cosmo.
I need to continue this. And I actually also subscribe to Style at Home Canada because my mom has a lot of like home magazines, and every time I'm there, I always flip through them. So I was like, you know what? I'm also going to do a home magazine. So now I get 2 every month.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was like, it must have been like 15 or something, maybe even younger. I was gifted a subscription to 17 magazine. And I had the subscription like for so many years, literally all through high school. And it was like my favorite gift ever because it was like I don't have sisters. So it was like, that's where I got like the older sister content from. Yeah. Yeah. It was so good.
That's how I read or feel reading Cosmo sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I do have sisters, but I'm just like, this isn't stuff that we always just like openly talk about. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just like, I don't know. It's always fun to read.
Yeah. No, I love that. My tip is also about getting something kind of delivered to your house, but mine is if you're someone who, like me, likes to get food delivered a lot, to try getting your groceries delivered, because when I first started getting my groceries delivered, I used to live in what was called a grocery desert, where there were like a bunch of people living in like this really small part downtown, but there were no grocery stores there because it was like recently built up. So they had built all these condos but hadn't built the shops. So like we didn't even have a Shoppers, like we were a desert. And so we obviously during the summer we could go on like a long walk, get our groceries, no big deal. But then as soon as it started to get like really snowy or anything, it was like, oh, I don't want to walk to the grocery store. Oh, let's just get Uber Eats. And then it's like that adds up so quickly, and it's like so much harder to eat healthy. It's, you know, like such a huge suck of money. It's probably still my biggest expense. I now have it like set up on my bank app where if I spend a certain amount of money on food deliveries, it's like, ma'am, what are you doing? And it still is like, I have a goal for a month and it always pings at like midway point. But the nice thing about the grocery deliveries is that now there are so many options. Most of the companies are pretty competitive, and the price to deliver all of your groceries is usually around the same price as one single delivery on Uber Eats. So if you're like, for some reason I thought grocery deliveries were like very fancy and expensive and was like a whole thing. But it's like now, if you're debating, should I get groceries or should I get Uber Eats? You could get your entire week's worth of groceries for the same amount of delivery. So, yeah, that's my tip. Something to try.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like one of the best parts that's kind of come from COVID is, and like living in isolation, is all this technology that's like just like popped up and made our lives like way easier to connect digitally. And I find like all the food apps now do grocery delivery, where before it was kind of like, you know, only Walmart did it, and like from the stores, and you had to like have certain apps or whatever like that did grocery delivery. But now I open my Uber Eats app and it's like you can just switch on grocery instead of, you know, your meal. Or like, what's the other one? Skip the Dishes, I think, also does it. Like it's just so much more accessible, and it's like all the grocery stores. Like So I really enjoy grocery shopping. I'm a huge loser, and I know this. And like typically, not now, but usually I'm also the type of gal to like go to every store if there's things on sale, you know, like I'll just like browse the flyers and be like, okay, this is on sale at Metro, so I'm going to go to Metro and get this. I'm going to go to Shoppers and get that, and I'm going to go to Loblaws and get that, because that's just how I was raised. So, and I enjoyed doing it, but it's just so much easier to now that all of those stores are available for grocery delivery. Saves so much time, you know?
Yep, exactly. And like, even say you like grocery shopping, so you're like, I do the bulk of my grocery shopping through the week, but then there's like certain, say, brands or whatever that are only carried at certain shops. Like Walmart has this really great like Halo Top dupe for, I don't know if food's called dupes, but it's a Halo Top dupe where it's like a low calorie, low carb-ish ice cream. And so it's like, okay, so there are certain things that maybe you buy off Amazon or whatever. Like we have cats, so we have to get cat litter, which is expensive and heavy, and cat food, which is heavy. So then it's like, okay, we'll put in an order for like the certain things we can only get at Walmart, and the heavy things, like we want a case of bubbly that we don't want to carry back. And then it's like you can do those mini orders too.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. Yeah. That is a very adult tip.
I feel like, I was just thinking, I'm like, it sounds like two like grannies talking. It's like, I love my house magazines. And I'm like, I love that they deliver the groceries to my house.
And I'm like, do you want to talk about coupon clipping? Because I'm into that.
Yeah. Yeah, people listening are like, I thought this was about your 20s. We're like, no, we were born in the 20s. That's why we're talking about this stuff. Oh boy.
The funny part is this is a podcast, so nobody's seeing our faces. They don't know if
that's true.
If we are in our 20s or 80s.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh man,
jeez,
so funny.
That's life in COVID. You turn into grannies, I think.
Yeah. These are the highlights of our life, is getting our magazine or groceries delivered.
Exactly. How sad.
Oh, man. So funny.
Yeah, so those are our Tuesday tips.
So today's episode, the meaty part of today's episode, is a good one. So I hope you guys have your tea, your coffee, glass of red wine, depending, when you're listening to this in the day, but it's going to be a good one. We're going to do, I feel, a little soul searching and just have a good life chat about mental wellness and mental health. Because as you guys know, we want to do talk about different aspects of the April Glow Up Challenge in every episode in April. And a big part of the April Glow Up Challenge is really just to inspire and empower you guys to feel your best. It is not just about looking your best. That is not what a glow up is all about. It's about feeling your best. And no better place to start than with your mental wellness and, all the thoughts going on in your head. So that is what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, and it's very, I don't want to say well-timed because it's unfortunate, but who has said that there is a parallel pandemic happening right now, and that say we're going into the third wave of COVID right now in Ontario.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And they're like, even after COVID, there will be a fourth wave of mental health problems. Because obviously, we had to lock down things to save as many lives as we could. There's no argument against that. But there are repercussions that we are seeing now, and probably so many that we won't see for a while. And I don't know that we'll see the full impact of what COVID is doing for maybe years to come. But already there has been huge spikes in people struggling with mental health right now. And on top of that, I feel like it's a good thing for us to talk about because a lot of mental health struggles start to emerge in your late teens and early 20s. So you could be someone who's never struggled with this before, and pandemic or no pandemic, these issues could be starting to pop up for you. And you could be like, what the heck is going on? I used to feel totally normal and now I don't. And the pandemic's just kind of amplifying everything, I think. So
yeah,
I'm glad we get to talk about it. I wanted to talk about this for a while. So episode 10 is a good one.
Yeah. And I feel it's so timely because I think it was at just the beginning of this episode, I'm talking about, these good days and bad days and how they're never ending, even though we're a year into living this way. And I'm often how am I still bothered? How am I still missing my real life? But that's just how I've been feeling the past few days. And I think having this chat is just going to make me feel a lot better and a lot lighter, and hopefully provides the same for everybody listening as well.
Yeah, I'd like that. I do feel like something that I've struggled with mental health problems for probably almost 10 years, maybe even longer. So a while. And something that I always hated is when people would say, well, other people are having a hard time too. Yeah. But that is true actually right now, because a lot of, if you're going through depression and anxiety, you're feeling isolated and alone and no one understands you. This is a unique time where it is almost guaranteed that anyone in your life is having feelings like they're out of control and feelings like they're maybe down because things are changing. So although that might not make you feel better to hear that other people are also going through it, it is factually true.
Yeah. And it is a little comforting to know it's not you. You know what I mean? It's the world we're living in here.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's not you. Yeah.
And it's nice to know that you're not Like falling behind, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everyone's paused, but
so true. Yeah. Teg, do you want to tell us more about your journey with, mental health and whatnot?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder in like either 2010 or 2011, something like that. And it's been something that like I've struggled with since then. Mm-hmm. Better sometimes and worse sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's kind of a common theme with this, is that it's something that you always are working on. Totally. And it can seemingly just go away and then come back. And this can be, for people who have been on medication for years and years and feel totally fine and come off the medication and all of their symptoms are back. Like it's, I think, something that, like your physical health, you have to kind of put in the effort to work on. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, like if you're struggling with depression, it's harder to put in the effort to work on it. But that's why I feel like this is a good thing to talk about, because like you were saying, part of glowing up is not only taking care of your body, but also taking care of your mind. And I think we're going to like go into some ways that you can do that. But so it's something I'm working on. I've tried a bunch of, different stuff. It spikes up and down. A lot of it I feel like has to do with what is going on in my life as well. Like, when things are working out really good in my life, then obviously it's less of an issue. Although it never fully goes away. There are times when I'm like, everything seems totally perfect and it still is bad for me. So
yeah, and I think that's so important to acknowledge, because I'm, for the most part, I feel like I have really strong and like solid, good mental health. Like I can talk about, I have experienced like anxiety before, and I've experienced like a lot of stress as well. And that's, like you were saying, relatively new to me. And it wasn't until I, started having to work a full-time job and pay rent, like that's when it started hitting for me.
Right.
Not so much, through my teenage years or even like my like early 20s and college and whatnot. It's relatively new. And it was very much like you said, Tag, where it was like, wait, what the heck? Like, this isn't me. Like, I'm a strong person. Why is this happening to me?
Right.
And I think what you said about how this is an ongoing challenge, I just want to also say that that's like, even for people who maybe haven't been like diagnosed with something, regardless, if you have mainly good days or mainly bad days, it is an ongoing struggle and like ongoing battle that you need to like continuously show up and fight for yourself. And some days are definitely very, very tough. But hopefully we can provide some, like you said, tips and ideas on how to make those bad days a little bit easier for everybody, regardless of what situation you're in.
Yeah, I do feel like I can say from personal experience, the more you work on it and the more you put in effort, the better it gets. Because like when you first start kind of like experiencing symptoms of whatever like mental health crisis you might be going through, a lot of it is kind of amplified by being like confused, feeling like you're losing control, you don't know what's going on, like why you're feeling these ways. And so as soon as you kind of acknowledge that that's what's happening and that it's something that you need to work on and you start putting in the work, it instantly gets better. So like 10 years ago when I would be having anxiety attacks, I would think I was dying. Whereas now, I like the first symptoms I can say to myself and I can say to my husband, oh, I'm having the symptoms of an anxiety attack. And then it's like, even just like saying that and getting yourself out of the like narrative and out of the situation, you're like, oh, okay. So we know that your body reacts this way to that. And here are the steps that we know that help combat it.
Yeah.
And so even just like acknowledging it can be like a huge first step. And knowing that like you're not dying, you are not alone. There are other people who are going through the same thing, who have gone through the same thing. And so once you kind of have that like realization, that can honestly make kind of like the world of difference, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I would say for me, that's like my first piece of advice and like my first tip for like how to cope with symptoms. And I mentioned Tyrell. I think a huge part is talking to someone, whether it's, you know, if you're younger, if it's a parent, if it's a close friend, if it's your boyfriend, or if it's your doctor. Like there are so many, especially now that appointments are virtual. I know like for my doctor, I book my appointments through an app, and they have on the app that's like, do you have questions about mental health? Because we can just connect you in a chat room to someone right away.
Wow.
Which is
That's
like
awesome.
so different from when I first started feeling this 10 years ago. But so nowadays there are so many resources, and that I feel like is probably like, I don't want to number the steps because I feel like I'm talking about like AA or something, but this is a good second step, is to talk to someone, because bringing in like an outside perspective, a lot of you know, the symptoms are that your thoughts are like circulating and you're kind of like stuck in a loop of thinking about these things that are making it worse. Like if you're depressed, you're thinking about all these things that are making you more depressed, and then it just cycles and cycles. So sometimes talking to someone who brings an outside perspective can kind of help break that cycle, I think.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, for me, it's just saying things out loud to actually like acknowledge them and like acknowledge how I feel. You know what I mean? So if it's something like really, I don't know, over the top, but when it's in my head, it doesn't feel over the top. But when I say it out loud, I'm like, holy crap, like that's really dramatic. Like, you know, or like, this is very over the top. Like, is that what I actually am thinking? Or is that what I actually mean? Is that, you know, what I actually want to do? Saying it out loud just makes it way more real, I guess. And like you're saying, also just having, you know, somebody to then provide their perspective if that's what you're looking for, or their advice, or, you know, give their 2 cents on the situation, can definitely, help, I think. And like, I have
a question. Do you, when someone's talking to you about a situation in your life, do you just want them to like hear you and be like, oh yeah, that sucks? Or do you want advice?
So I have a very complicated answer to that.
Okay.
And I feel it might like kind of spiral into me ranting about journaling, but here we go. So I think I mentioned in past episodes how like deep down I'm this really, like, I always say I'm this really awful person. And I think it's been like this year-long journey after like moving out of my parents' house, where I'm like really trying to like, I don't know, become who I know I'm capable of being. But it's a lot of still like, you know, letting go of who I was growing up, and who that person was a very like pessimistic person. I was very defensive. I was always felt like, I remember my parents saying like, you know, nobody's out to get you, because that's kind of how I reacted to everything, was somebody always had a problem with me and everyone was out to get me, you know, and like I was just a negative person. So that is kind of, okay, that's where I want to start the answer, because when I was younger, I used to just wish so badly for a best friend who thought the exact same way I thought, because I felt like anytime I did talk about my problems, anytime people did offer me advice, like typically, you know, this is more so my parents, who I feel so sorry for, you know, they're raising like an angsty kid, but, you know, they're trying to give me advice and it just doesn't resonate with me, or I wasn't super close with my sisters growing up. That has changed over time, and now I really value their advice. But before, when I was younger, I didn't. And even my friends, like, I didn't look for advice, and talking about my problems, I just wanted to talk about it. Where now I feel like I've gotten to a point where, okay, well, first of all, going back to, I just wanted this friend who understood me and would give me advice that wouldn't just tick me off more. It would actually like be constructive and help me, because when I was, you know, in a bad mood and had something to rant about or complain about, the smallest things would just make me spiral and make me even more upset, because that's just who I was and who I still am sometimes. So that's why I started journaling, was because I found it was such a great way to just like release all that anger or all those thoughts into a notebook. So you're, you know, like we said, it's kind of verbalizing it. Even if it wasn't out loud, it was writing it down. So it was getting those thoughts out of your head and acknowledging them. But my book couldn't talk back to me. You know what I mean? It couldn't say, well, Sadie, like, you know, you're just being sensitive, or whatever, you know, maybe my parents or my sisters would say. And over time, I got this like really, I don't know, got very like in tune with myself, I guess, where I was able to cope with my emotions a lot better. So now when I do talk to my friends or my sisters, like I said, I've grown a lot closer to my sisters and even my parents. Like I value their advice and opinions way more now than I did when I was younger. But I've gotten to a point where I'm able to cope with my emotions on my own. So when they do give me advice, I'm, you know, just how I process that is a lot different and way more constructive and like better now. You know what I mean? And I think too, I've voiced on a other episode where one of my sisters is like my go-to person for absolutely everything. And the best part and worst part about siblings is, you know, they're going to be honest with you all the time. And you have to love them at the end of the day. So that's like, you know, a blessing and a curse. But sometimes, you know, I'll say to my sister, or she'll just know when to not provide her opinion, or I'll say like, I'm not looking for advice, like I just need to get this off my chest, and she'll just, you know, respond with 2 words being like, okay, I hope you feel better, you know, voicing on that. Or there's times where I'm like, look, I'm really stuck, I don't know what to do, what do you think? And I make it very clear I'm looking for opinions or advice. So I also suggest that for people too, is be clear with what you want out of your friend. And on the opposite side, sorry, I'm just like rambling on now.
No, that's
but on the opposite side of that is I'm also the type of person to give my opinion on absolutely everything. But I'm learning lately to, like, lately as in I want to say just like the past few years, to really scale that back. And especially now, you know, when everybody does have so much going on mentally, asking your friends before you respond, being like, okay, so do you actually want to hear, you know, what I have to say, or do you just want to like, you know, vent to me? Because I think that's a very valid point, is not everybody's always talking to somebody to hear something back. Sometimes they just need to get it off their chest.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it's good, especially like if you're talking to someone who's ranting. You can, like, it's totally fair to ask, like, are you looking for, like, a shoulder to cry on, or, like, someone to rant to? Or do you want my advice on this situation? Because I, 99% of the time, never want advice. I just want to rant. Where, and a lot of the people in my life only want to give advice. So, because I think that's just because I make up my mind quickly, so I already know what I'm gonna do, but then I'm still like, but I still want to talk about this.
It's a miracle we've been friends for this long, because that right there sums up our friendship.
I try to even think. It's funny, like there are certain situations where I ask people for advice. Like there are older people in my life who I will ask, like, what do you think I should do about this, this, and this? But like, a lot of situations, if I'm like ranting about work or something, and then Tyrell's like, well, then you should email them. And I'm like, no, we're not taking action. I'm just ranting.
That's so funny. But that's so fair, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think, like, we all, first of all, like, process our emotions in different ways. Yeah. And like I was saying, how this same person processes their emotions can change over time.
Yeah. So kind of like on the same topic of, you know, ranting to your friends or whatever, I also think probably like 99% of the people in the world should see a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, I deal with a lot of people and I'm like, you people need therapy. But also, I feel like it's just like a nice way to get an outside perspective, because 99% of the time your therapist doesn't know anyone else in your life. Mm-hmm. They're there like for you, to support you, and they can give like the outside proper perspective, because sometimes you get like bogged down in things like we were talking about in the work episode. You're like stuck in a culture that you don't even know is toxic, whereas if you had that outside voice that would be like, whoa, people should not be treating you that way, and you're like, oh, okay, and they have no reason, like they're not lying about it, there's no motive there.
I think it was one of my sisters said, we were talking about, you know, talking to a therapist, and they raised, I think it was one of my sisters, maybe a friend, I don't remember, but same thing, Tig, where everybody I know who sees a therapist is like, I recommend it to anybody. Like everybody can benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And when I was talking to my sister, she brought up the point that what's so interesting is like, typically when you do rant to your friends or your family, you know, people you feel comfortable confiding in, that's not, you know, a paid therapist. Yeah. They still have like these biases on your life, you know, and that's going to shape the advice they give you to do. It's not, you know, maybe the best advice. It's just what they think you should do, knowing all these other information about your life and where, you know, you come from, your circumstances, your environment, you know, all this stuff shapes what the people in your life tell you to do. And when you go to a therapist who, like you said, has literally no knowledge of you or the people in your life, I feel like what they will say will be a lot different than the people in your circle, because probably how they think about things and, you know, where they come from is a lot different than how you think about things and where you come from and all the people in your life. So it really is like this very, like you said, like professional, like real opinion that they have no reason to lie or like make things up, or they have no reason to be biased either, you know? And I think, too, what I love about talking about therapy these days is, like I was saying, everybody who I know who sees a therapist, like, recommends it. And I love that because, like I was saying, and I'm really sorry if I'm coming across, like, braggy in any way, but, like, I really do find before the pandemic especially, like, I had a pretty strong mental game. And I was never one to be like, wow, I should talk to a therapist, you know? But one of my friends said to me, like, I think you would enjoy talking to a therapist because, like, it's not just weak people who talk to therapists, and it's also not a shameful thing anymore, you know? Like, I love how our, you know, society is, like, changing to actually talk about these things because they do matter so much, and, like, you know, people are using their social media platforms to voice these sorts of things and share resources, not just show a highlight reel of their life all the time, depending who you follow, but, you know, some people are doing that. And that's it exactly, is it's not a shameful topic anymore. And it's not, like we said, just for people who are suffering from like diagnosed disorders or like mental, you know, like very like scientific mental illnesses. It's literally you can benefit from it for any reason, and anybody can do it, and everybody should do it. Yeah. So it's just so great. And like you said too, it's also the fact that, again, one of these like technologies that's come out of COVID is like the ability to like virtually connect people. So there's also no shame in sitting in a waiting room and maybe bumping into someone on your way to your appointment and being embarrassed about it. Like, you shouldn't ever be embarrassed about it anyway. But, you know, it just removes that. It removes any barriers when you can literally just Zoom call or like text a professional. Like, it's just so accessible right now. And I think that's a really amazing thing.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you wanted a meal plan, you would go to a dietitian. If you wanted, like, a workout plan, you would go to a personal trainer. Like, you wouldn't cut your own hair and dye your own hair, you go to a hairdresser. Like, this is the same thing. If this is an aspect of your life that you want to glow up, like, why not go to a professional who can, like, actually help you and give you steps? Like, my therapist gives me homework. My homework this week, you'll love this, Sadie, I had to journal.
Yes.
I had to write letters to myself. But they, give you tasks like that. And these are, like, you know, like, this is the stuff, do it this week, and we'll meet next week and talk about it and figure it out. You know, like, it's just, I think, one more step to kind of, like, living your best life.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is it's investing in you being the best version of yourself, you know? And that's why it's for everybody, because everybody's capable of being an awesome person. And, like, that's literally all it is just investing in yourself to get there. So I love that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So obviously, like, that's my main, I think, recommendation is, like, either talking to your doctor, because they can kind of, like, get you on the next steps, or finding a therapist yourself. I just found mine, like, through online, and now I'm obsessed with her. Our very first meeting, we were talking about what kind of music I liked when I was younger, and I was like, Shania Twain, and she was like, she's very powerful. I know exactly what you mean. And I was like, okay, you and me, we're riding dies now. We both love Shania Twain. Yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah. I'm definitely, the past few months, I want to say, I've been thinking about how much I want to talk to somebody. And I don't know why, like, I'm preaching out here. It's not shameful, guys. Everybody can benefit from it. But it's taken me a long time to convince myself to actually do it. And to this day, I have not talked to a therapist, but I'm going to, especially Tag, after you were telling me, you know, your experience has been so great. It just, like, sealed the deal for me. So I definitely want to. And like you said, you can talk about literally anything in your life. And for me, like, work, and I mentioned this earlier, is like the first time I ever felt anxiety was from work. And it was my second job, like, full-time job. And, you know, just, I felt like I was constantly striving for more, striving to do the next thing, and really just, like, struggling to, like, multitask and balance all these, like, tasks and projects. And it just started, you know, kind of spilling into my personal life as well, where it wasn't just at work that I was, you know, shaky and, like, anxious and, you know, cloudy minded, couldn't think straight, and was just, like, constantly felt very heavy in my chest. That was happening even outside of the office as well. And I remember that happening to me and being like, wow, I think I have, like, anxiety, which we talked about was the first time for me where I didn't know if that's what it was, you know? And now I find I'm so, I want to say, easily triggered at work. In my personal life, not so much. You know, like, people do obviously get under my skin sometimes and, like, try to, like, they stress me out, but it doesn't ever take the same sort of, like, power over my life as, like, work stress and work anxiety does. So I literally just want to talk to a therapist to get all that under control, because I'm like, I've literally said to my sister, I want to say, like, 3 times, probably just in, like, since 2021 started, was I literally feel like this is, like, really personal, and I don't want to, like, scare people, but I feel like the path I'm on, I'm literally going to have, like, a heart attack from work stress by the time I'm, like, 35. Right. And, like, that is not good. You know what I mean? So it's like, get ahead of that. You know, if you know what triggers you, you know where you have, like, really huge opportunity to improve, like, get ahead of it and do something about it. And I think for me, seeing a therapist to talk to them about those things that I know set me off, like, there's no downside to that, you know?
Yeah. And because the thing with mental wellness is that no matter what, you're going to have stressors in your life, and you're going to have people that, like, say stupid stuff that enrages you, and you're going to have, like, last minute work things that come up. But having the kind of, like, strong mental wellness means that you have the tools in your toolbox to kind of deal with that stress without it unraveling your whole life.
Exactly. You have the tools and abilities to cope with things and get through things without it just causing you to shut down or, you know, spiral into like really negative headspace. That's so true.
Yeah. So on top of talking to someone, whether it's your doctor or a therapist, I also find that moving your body can be something really positive. Like we talk about walks a lot, but I feel like going for a walk, whether it's like with someone that you can talk to or even just by yourself, can be a nice way to kind of get yourself out of the situation, especially like I know what my specific triggers are, and one of them is getting emails, which is a nightmare because nowadays I get like 50,000 emails a day. So it's like, your triggers are sending you over the edge. If I'm getting like 50 emails and I find myself being like, oh, I'm noticing these symptoms of anxiety, then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to like step outside the situation and take a walk. And it's like guaranteed that by the time I'm back, I'm like, okay, what was I worried about? Now I can look at those emails. No big deal. Like, it's good to remove yourself from the situation sometimes.
Yeah. I do the exact same thing. Like midday walks. I don't know if I've talked about that on the podcast, but it's a game changer. It's literally pressing a reset button in the middle of your day, taking a walk at lunch. It's so good, especially if work or emails, screens, anything. Yeah. Like if that's your trigger, like get outside, move your body, get some fresh air, and you'll definitely feel a lot better.
Yeah.
I also think like I miss like yoga classes and like, fitness classes and like being in a room where I literally would always feel like all my problems were left at the door. And I know that's like so cliche, but that's honestly how it felt, going into a hot yoga room, laying down on the mat. And this is something my last boss and I used to talk about because she was older than I was, like in her 40s. And she would say, so when you do yoga, you literally aren't thinking about anything besides like yoga. And I was like, yeah, like literally, like I'm not thinking of anything. I'm just like listening to the instructor's voice. But now that I'm doing yoga at home, it's so much harder to get into that headspace. And like, it is not the same at all where, I definitely see that struggle, but that's been a big one for me. And hopefully we can return back to fitness classes eventually. But I think too, another big one, maybe I don't know if it fits into fitness or not, but just like establishing a routine for yourself really helps me. And the sense of it just, I guess, provides purpose, or like we were saying, like sometimes you get anxious these days around lack of control or like not being able to plan and anticipate what's going to happen. The magic of having a routine is it just provides, like a plan, and it provides like a sense of control over the day-to-day like tasks in your life. You know what I mean? And I think right now we're anxious because we can't control what's happening. We can't predict what's next. But with a routine, just to do like a morning and night routine, whatever happens throughout the day just happens. You don't need to plan your whole day from like the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. But I find just having, a morning routine really helps me like set myself up for a better day. And then having a nighttime routine helps me wind down at the end of that day and wake up and have a like productive morning because I set myself up for that the night before. So it kind of removes any kind of, I guess, just like chaos that comes along with not having a routine, and provides a little bit of structure, which always helps me feel a little bit more at ease mentally when I know what's going to happen, or I can like plan what's going to happen,
Yeah, and I feel like your routine can kind of be whatever you want it to be. Like it doesn't have to be like I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and then I'm going to do yoga and I'm good. Like if your routine is getting out of bed and brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
If you are struggling mentally and you just make that your priority and you're like, I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to brush my teeth, that can make like a world of difference. And then it's like, once you got that under control, well, then you add another thing and you're like, I'm going to put on deodorant. And then next thing you know, you've got like an 18-step skincare routine like me. And, and then your routine takes up half your morning. But you can like create it. And same with nighttime. Like some people's nighttime routine is like crazy. Like I see people and they're like, I have to have this shower with 18 products and then I have to do yoga in bed and I read this and do this and I journal, where it's like if your nighttime routine is like you have a shower and then you get into bed and you fall asleep, like that's good, and build off of that, you know?
Yeah, I love the idea of building off of routine, because that is it 100%. And I love also how you're calling out these other routines as like unachievable for a lot of people, because that is it for me. Is I think last week we talked about, you know, having to show up perfectly, and like this idea of like perfectionism and that standing in your way of doing anything when you know there's a chance you can't do it perfectly. But that was it, where I never had a morning routine because I'm not a morning person. So when I look up morning routines, that's it. It's you get up, you eat breakfast, you do yoga, you write in your journal, you read, then you get dressed, do your hair, your makeup, and you go off to work. And I was like, and you also have to get up at 5 a.m. in order to do all that before the workday begins. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, no, there's no way. I literally will snooze for an hour and then roll out of bed, you know, get ready in 10 minutes and go off to work. Like, that's my routine. So one day I sat down and I wrote in my journal, like, what would the ideal morning look like? And it was very realistic for myself, where it was literally, you know, I will have 25 minutes to get ready instead of 10 minutes to get ready, you know? And that was what I started with. And then I built off of it, like you said, exactly. So it was like, get up, get coffee, and just have 25 minutes to get ready. Now it's like, okay, I get up, I get coffee, I spend, you know, 15 to 30 minutes in bed reading one of these magazines, that's what it's been lately, or listening to a podcast, and then do my skincare routine and then go to work. But that's it. There's no journaling. There's no like yoga. Any kind of physical activity is not realistic for me in the morning. But then with the glow up challenge, I'm wanting to like add in, we talked about like adding in vitamins and like, you know, adding in more things, where it's like I have this base routine established and now I'm just going to add things into it.
And this is why I feel like this is great for our 10th episode, because a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for the past 9 can directly impact your mental health. Like if you, like, we're just not talking about this stuff because it's like we like skincare or whatever. We obviously do, but it can be something that actually is a part of transforming your life. And it's not like I use skincare because I don't want wrinkles because being old is gross. It's like I use skincare because it's part of a routine, and I like having a moment of self-care in the morning that's just for me, and it's not a performance, and it's me taking care of myself. And,
exactly.
And it's like that can apply to everything in your life, and stuff like drinking water. I'll have to find it and we can maybe share it on our Instagram. But there's a great checklist of like, are you feeling anxious? Well, have you done any of these things? So it's like, have you had a drink of water in the last hour? Have you eaten in the last hour? And it's because a lot of these feelings come up because your body is in need of something and it's sounding alarm bells. And so by taking care of like your physical self, you're also taking care of yourself mentally. And when you take care of yourself mentally, you're taking care of yourself physically. Like it all
ties together.
Connected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure. So wise, Tag. Always coming in with your profound wisdom. Like you said, around the idea of like your routine isn't a show, and it's not, you know, something you're doing to try to like impress people, or because it's what you're told to do by Pinterest or, you know, people on TikTok or Instagram, whatever. I think the same thing about journaling. And I say this because obviously I've already talked in this episode about how much I love journaling and how I really feel like it's like changed kind of the way I like, you know, my sense of self, I guess. It's made me more in tune with myself. And I really think, like therapy, everybody can benefit from journaling. But it's not that I'm telling you to journal just because it's really trendy right now. And I'm also gonna say that you don't need to have a super pretty journal. You don't need to like doodle in a bullet journal format and make your spreads really pretty. Like, this is all part of it too, is like we're saying, don't do a skincare routine just to like be pretty. It's like you don't need to have a journal just for it to be pretty and Instagrammable. Like, literally I love journaling, and I have 0 rules when it comes to my journal, which is the best part about it. I remember when I got my first journal. Well, not first journal. I had like my Dear Diary, like diaries from way back in the day. Those were probably my first journals. But my first adult notebook where I was like, this is going to be my journal where I'm going to like do whatever I want in this. It was just a very liberating experience where I was like, if I want to draw something, I'm going to draw something. And I'm a really bad drawer. So that was just like comforting to me, is like, nobody's going to even see this.
Right.
So if I want to draw something, I'm going to draw something. If I want to make a list, I'll make a list. Like we said, it's like, what does my ideal morning look like? I literally wrote that in like, 5 points. Some days where I have a lot of thoughts and emotions going on in my head, I write full paragraphs and like write pages on pages. Other days I literally write down a quote that I saw on Instagram that day that really resonated with me. Like, it's literally, you can use your journal for whatever you want to use your journal for. I think it's the biggest thing is just to show up and do it and use it. And Teg, I love that your therapist told you to give you homework to like write in a journal.
Yeah, I still haven't done it yet, but
yeah, because now I'm even like more interested in going to a therapist, being like, okay, give me journal homework.
Yeah.
Tell me what to write in here, because sometimes if you don't have like any guardrails, you don't know what to do and like where to start. So if that's the case, guys, we do have a journal prompts list in our Patreon in the $6 tier. So definitely sign up for our Patreon to get access to that. But I think journaling is just something, when we're talking about mental wellness, it's the first thing that comes to mind. I actually went to the Body Shop last weekend, and at the checkout they were like, oh, we're doing this like board and you need to write down, well, you don't need to, but we're asking people to write down what self-love means to them, and then they're putting all the answers on this like board right inside the door. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a loaded question. Like, self-love is everything.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, self-love is journaling, because I really feel like over time, I shared my experience with journaling is over time you get this sense of self from it, and you're able to kind of be aware of your thoughts and everything that's going on in your mind. By writing it down, you're able to like actually process it and like see it, especially over time, and then you decide what you want to do with that from there. And I think something that also rings true or comes to mind, I guess, when we're talking about self-love and mental wellness is like learning how to be your own best friend. That's something that I could just like go on and on about forever. And I promise I'd keep the journal piece short in this episode. But I feel like journaling is one of the best ways to do that. And I feel like once you're aware of what you're thinking, you're aware of how you talk to yourself, aka you're aware of what you're thinking when you're not talking to other people or other people aren't around, like you know what that inner narrative is. You're, like I said, then you're able to decide, am I okay with how I talk to myself, or do I want that to change? And then you can start, working on changing that inner narrative. So, you can become that friend for yourself and hopefully help yourself through some tougher, darker times. Rather than always having to rely on somebody else to get you through those times. So that's my 2 cents on journaling. I think it's a really great thing. But the other thing is, I think it's something, like a lot of this, I think it's something you have to experience to actually understand. And that's the hard part, where if you're not convinced it's going to help you, then you don't feel the need to journal all the time. And then it doesn't end up doing anything for you. But over time, I found journaling's really helped me, and I suggest that to literally everybody.
Yeah, it's another way to like show up for yourself. Like, you go to a yoga class because you're showing up for yourself, or you listen to a podcast that inspires you because you're taking the time to show up for yourself. It's just like one more thing, especially now when we're all like alone. This could be like the ideal time to connect with yourself.
100%. And I get asked all the time, do you read your journal entries back? And I think maybe in another episode I mentioned sometimes yes, but I know a lot of people who don't because they'll, just take to their journal during those like darker times, so they don't want to relive those dark times. Right. So they just don't read those times back. Where I think what's so great about journaling, especially if you journal in the good and bad times, you have this like documentation of how you used to be, how you used to think, and how you've evolved over time. And I think there's something so like profound about that. And I think that's what like helps provide like the sense of self. But then again, you have to be dedicated to writing in the good and bad times and like actually opening your journal, documenting your life, and giving your future self something to look back on and analyze, But I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes from that for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually just remembering that I had a journal during when I first started like experiencing anxiety, and I don't think I want to read those entries. Yeah, I don't know. I was also like younger, so they'd probably be embarrassing, but
yeah.
Maybe I'd be like, look how far I came, but maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something I'm probably just going to continue to rant on, so tell me to stop at any time. But that's something else too, is like how we reflect on our past. Like, reliving past memories isn't always good, but if you're able to reflect on things and not beat yourself up over how you behaved or how you thought, like it is a really like good exercise to do. You just have to keep in mind, like we talked about this in the work episode, where it's like you didn't know then what you know now to react any differently. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I hope, Tag, you do some journaling during the April Glow Up Challenge.
Yeah, I am going to, like, I've been writing my my goals like at the beginning each month, and it must have been February. I did do one like rogue entry. Yeah. And then like obviously my therapist told me to write, so I still have to do that, but yeah. So I got from 0 to like 1 entry a month. Now I'm getting up to 2 entries a month, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll slowly improve. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious if you're gonna like find value in it like I do.
Yeah, it's interesting. One thing my therapist got me to do is like draw my childhood bedroom, and I'm not an artist. And then I had like the best time. I spent like 2 hours like on my iPad doing like watercolors and all this stuff. So it's like surprising the stuff. I'm interested like I always get these random things show up on like Instagram and TikTok that are like today's journal prompt, and it's like just something really random. So I'm kind of intrigued to just like every once in a while when I see one of those be like, okay, I'm gonna write about that random topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm improving.
Yeah, I want to do some of those like impromptu prompts as well.
Yeah,
I think that would be fun.
So if you are experiencing symptoms of any kind of mental health problems, whether it's anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, literally anything, or if you're not even sure, you just feel like something's not right, we really encourage you to reach out to someone. Like I said, reach out to your doctor. That is what they're trained for. That is how I first got my diagnosis, is that I literally talked to my doctor and they were like, oh yeah, these are the textbook symptoms of anxiety. And just getting that diagnosis helped me so much. So if you are interested about learning more or questioning, or you need support, if you're in Ontario, you can go to ontario.cmha.ca, and they have crisis supports. There are a ton right now because of COVID-19, as well as a list of toll-free numbers for different types of things. If you need an assaulted women's hotline, or if you need LGBT support, or you need kids help phone, they have all of the resources listed there. Additionally, if you're in Ontario, you can call 211 to be connected to mental health and other social services. Additionally, if you are thinking about therapy and you're not 100% sure, I can recommend the app BetterHelp. They have, I think, a week free trial. So if you're not sure, I think that's a really good place to start. And then even if you're not sure that BetterHelp is the right place for you, you still know after your week trial maybe if therapy is or is not. Yeah, the Ontario government has a lot of stuff right now. I know they have a website where they do cognitive behavioral therapy for free. So it's just you are chatting with a therapist. It's never like a phone call or anything. It's all just in a chat room, and they like assign you homework basically. So there are a ton of supports out there right now. And additionally, if you want to talk to someone about it, feel free to DM us at our Golden 20s on all platforms, or you can DM us on our personal Instagrams if you want, because we are here to listen and to support you, because we want all of us to be living our best lives.
Thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Our Golden 20s. You can find us on social media at Our Golden 20s, basically on all platforms. We are on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. We have some Spotify playlists, and we are also on Patreon, serving up lots of good exclusive April Glow Up content all this month. So be sure to check us out there. But we will talk to you guys next week.
See you next Tuesday.